What's up, Internet? You're tuned into episode 130 of Nintendo Noise, Split Screen Games weekly Nintendo podcast. I'm your host, Peter Messi, joined as always by my very good friend and co host, Mr. Steven Radford.
Hello, hello.
Hello, Steve. Man,
How's
we're
it
back.
going?
You know, it's good, I guess. This week's topic gets me a little uneasy. We're talking about emulation, and we're talking about a situation that I think ultimately has turned out fine, but that I was real nervous about, if I'm honest with you, because
Mhm.
Nintendo has killed Yuzu, the Nintendo Switch emulator.
Yeah, I know, it's pretty crazy, but, kinda saw it coming, I think, especially when you read through the documents and the evidence that Nintendo had. It was kind of they were playing with fire over at the Yuzu camp.
Yeah, it's so funny because when you brought this story to my attention, I think we were coming off of recording a different show like later in the week. We had like already done Nintendo Noise and everything. And I was like, "Are you kidding me?" Like, I didn't realize like, obviously, like, I'm aware of Yuzu by name, right?
Oh, yeah, well, what was Yuzu for, Pete? What was you
Transparently, I've not used it, right? Like, because, despite the fact that I am an advocate for emulation and ROMs, as a means of preservation and distribution of games that are not commercially available or versions of games that are not commercially available. Um yeah, but to me, right, like, unless you're conducting an experiment of some kind, or I guess unless you
I've used it. I've used it on my Steam Deck to play games that run better there, like Luigi's Mansion 2, which
Sure.
I own a copy of. Play it runs at 60 frames per second on the Steam Deck. It only runs at
Yeah.
30 on the Switch, and it's nice to be able to get a little bit more performance out of those older Switch titles.
I did consider doing that with, Xenoblade Chronicles 3 because I was enjoying my time with that, quite a bit, but I didn't like how it performed in handheld mode, on the Switch
Mhm.
because it was, like, down to, like, 540p, and it just, like, made for a not nice experience. So yeah, like, obviously, I guess there are legitimate uses for it outside of piracy, arguably. But, when it comes to modern consoles, that's just something I don't even think about because I own a Switch, right? So it's like I don't need to do that, right? I don't think there's anything wrong with the situations that you've described, right? And like you and I both know that you own a copy of those games, right? So fair play. But I think to your point, right, when you look at what it was specifically was that Nintendo is bringing up, taking issue with, um, it's it goes, like, far beyond, like, an emulator, right? Like, circumnavigating their c it's like, no, they were actively making money off of something people were using pretty much explicitly to pirate software, right? Like
Yeah, so specifically the document that Nintendo submitted to the court referenced a bunch of games that they were able to on the day of release get Tears of the Kingdom working. They got Metroid Dread, Super Mario 3D World, Pokemon Let's Go Eevee, Let's Go Pikachu. They were all playable on the day of release, and
some
Nintendo
even
alleges,
before that. Tears
yeah,
of the
and
Kingdom was
that
they
was the day before.
it was at 1,000,000 copies, had been illegally downloaded before the official launch.
Yeah, and so the way you would get early access to that version that could play these games potentially before launch was you paid for early access via Yuzu's Patreon, and that got you access to this kind of beta build of the emulator. And Nintendo doesn't like the fact that they were basically making money off the back of people being able to play these games before they were released.
Which is
And I can
reasonable.
see why it's
Yeah.
pissing Nintendo off.
Yeah, because to me, it's like that's such a different thing than like what we've talked about in the past, where it's like
Saints
um,
Dolphin, for example, it's like,
right?
those games have been out forever, the emulators mature, and yeah, Nintendo obviously had issue with it coming to Steam, but they've not gone after that emulator. Why would they really need to?
Just like
Here
as a product, right? Well, and again, they literally can't, right? There's a legal precedent defending emulation as an action, right? But how you use
Mhm.
it is obviously, you know, it's like why it's not illegal to offer an emulator, for download, but like ROMs are something that like people have been um what was his name?
Gary Bowser,
Gary
yeah.
Bowser, yeah, thank you. Of course, that's the part of the name I'm struggling
Yeah.
to formulate. It's not Gary, it was Bowser. But like that, you know, uh, software is different, right? Like trading copies of software is piracy, right? Whereas like the act of emulating in this case, a video game console's hardware is not the same thing.
Well, emulation's fine. The arguments that Nintendo had was it was circumventing Nintendo's technical protection methods, and that they potentially had cryptographic keys that were embedded in Yuzu that were decoding the ROMs, or that you needed to use one of their other tools to dump those keys and dump things from your Switch, which is also circumventing copy protection. But use the Nintendo was in the Discord. They were following all of this. They were in the Yuzu Discord taking screenshots and piecing it all together.
Yeah.
And there's no way that you could get Tears of the Kingdom running on an emulator the day before its launch without having stolen a copy of the game yourself, because you wouldn't have had access to it early. You wouldn't have got that as a developer of Yuzu without downloading it illegally from the eShop or from somewhere else, and then dumping it and then running it in Yuzu. And apparently, it's alleged that they were sharing these ROMs on their Discord and private channels, and they had um this ROM stash on Discord that the developers would kind of be like, okay, can you test this with this ROM? Can you test this with this ROM, as they were working on it and sharing these ROMs around? And yeah, and I mean, it's pretty crazy stuff. The fact that they also were tracking all of this data, like I don't know if you saw the bit about the telemetry stuff, which collected data about the most popular games on the that were used on Yuzu, and they even put out like a Yuzu progress report last June, that said Tears of the Kingdom was by far the most played game on Yuzu.
So crazy that they did all that, that they just, like, didn't think there would be any repercussions when you, like, know how famously and historically litigious Nintendo is,
Mhm.
you know? It's crazy. Like, how do you read that article about Gary Bowser being in prison and then, like, getting out and owing Nintendo money for the rest of his life and not be like, "This could happen to me," you know? Like, it's like,
Well,
it's crazy to me.
yeah.
It's crazy.
I mean, I guess it's because, like, 1, they're making loads of money, right, every single month on their Patreon and probably from elsewhere. 2,
Yeah, because
a
it's a
lot of
crime.
these people were behind the Citra emulator, the 3DS emulator as well, which is part of this has also kind of been collateral damage and has gone away too. Um, so I would imagine they'd never been chased after for the Citra emulator. They maybe thought, "Well, why is Yuzu gonna be any different? They're not gonna come after us for this," but obviously they were wrong.
I
And
mean,
and, like, to
but it's
come
like,
after them
did they have a
this late,
Patreon for Citra is the thing? You know, is like, because I
I
think that
don't
to me
know, actually.
is the big thing, is like, I think a lot of what they did,
Yeah,
if
they
they
did. Citra team had a Patreon, yeah,
how long though?
since 2018.
Yeah, I mean, that's a long time.
Yeah, it's
That's
gone now. It's like there's a
yeah, of course.
404 when you go to it, but yeah, it
But
was
yeah, but I mean,
open.
but you know what I mean? Like, it's like, I think I think a lot of this stuff is stuff they probably could have gotten away with to a certain degree if they weren't
If it wasn't for
profiting
those
off of
meddling
it.
kids and that dumb dog, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, because it like, and I get it, right? Like, don't get me wrong, they were putting work into it and they wanted a financial return, sure, but it's like, you're like, yeah, it's so obviously
To
copyright
pay to
infringement, though.
paywall the, like, versions that can play pre-release games, that's where it's like,
Yeah.
you really fucked up.
It's like,
Like,
dude,
what are
like,
you
you're
doing?
yeah, like, you just documented the fact that you were like, "Yeah, no, we're committing a crime and we're charging people for the right for it." That's crazy. It's crazy to me, you know?
I know. And it's all documented in their Discord. There's, like, posts referenced in the kinda legal action dating all the way back from 2018 when they started doing this stuff.
Yeah, it's nuts.
Yeah. And I feel bad for them because, like, man, this must have been a scary day to kinda get the letter in the
Oh,
post
yeah.
or to see that you've got this lawsuit from Nintendo
I
against
just
your company.
I just can't believe that they didn't see it coming, is my thing.
No.
You
I
know, it's
know.
like that's the thing I find so odd. You know, like, don't get me wrong, like, yeah, like, at the end of the day, like, I don't wanna see anybody go to jail be bankrupt or have their life ruined over the fact that they wanted to, emulate like let people emulate Tears of the Kingdom. And also it's wild to me to be this flagrant about something like this and be like, yeah, yeah, it'll be fine. You know,
Why Yuzu specifically though? Because Ryujinx obviously is another Switch emulator. They're also raking in almost $2,000 a month on their Patreon. Um, and maybe it's developed a little bit differently because I know with Ryujinx you have to install the firmware, like the official Nintendo firmware. You have to basically download the firmware itself and install it, which is similar to how like RPCS3, the PS3 emulator works. You install the firmware that you download. So maybe that's why. But you gotta imagine that that team's probably like, "Shit, should we shut our should we shut our Discord down? Should we shut our
yeah.
Patreon down? Should we, like, take pause because
I guess
we
it
don't wanna be
depends.
having to pay that out?"
Because I think like what you said, it's like how like there are certain like I know the PlayStation 1 works this way, right? Like where if you set up a PS1 emulator, you need to supply the BIOS, right? Like you said. So like that's
Mhm.
the kind of thing where like there are situations where sometimes it's that step, that's the thing that becomes illegal. So like if if
And you
uh
do have to do that step for Yuzu. You have to supply
right.
the prod keys that you're
But
supposed to dump yourself, which, we all know no one's gonna do that.
But to your point, like if there's something about Ryujinx that is like the way that it's packaged is maybe different and it can skirt the law, that might be part of it. But I think it could also just be that like if they're not offering those same tools or like the same like, hey, like behind this veiled garden, you can pirate Tears of the Kingdom. Like I think those are the things that might be the difference because I think profiting off of developing an emulator is not a problem. It's profiting off of in like knowingly empowering people to commit piracy with that stuff, right? You know what I mean? It's like it's one of those things where it's like it's not illegal to, you know, I'm trying to think of a non-morbid example here. Um
You can do pot for your own personal use, but you can't deal it.
Sure, right. Like yeah, fine. And I mean I guess that's not a perfect example, but that's the spirit of what I'm trying to say, right? Like there are plenty examples of things like that where it's absolutely not illegal to have this specific thing or whatever, but it's illegal to or like it's not illegal to drive a car, but it's illegal to run someone over with it, right? Like it's like just because you have an emulator, there are legal ways to use the Switch emulator, like we were just talking about, like dumping files to games you own, to take a game that you own and back it up, right? Like things like sure, fair enough. And if that's all that they're doing of like, hey, we make this and we have a Patreon and you can support us on it, then they're probably
Well,
fine.
seemingly that's what they thought that they were doing, but Nintendo
Yeah,
obviously thought
but it wasn't.
otherwise.
Yeah, and it's like here's my thing. Because we've talked a lot about our opinion about it. I'll offer a little bit more of the reporting that like makes me not feel bad for them, but a little bit kinda like, how did you not like, some of the things that they've said to me feel a little
And
dubious.
it's foolish.
So here
It's foolish behavior.
I think it's foolish at best, and it's feigning ignorance at worst is I think my thing. So they, Tropic Haze is the team behind Yuzu and Citra, and they made a statement on their Discord that IGN found, and this is what they said. Yuzu and Yuzu's support of Citra are being discontinued effective immediately. Yuzu and its teams have always been against piracy. We started the projects in good faith out of passion for Nintendo and its consoles and games, and we're not intending to cause harm. But we see now that because our projects can circumvent Nintendo's technological protection measures and allow users to play games outside of authorized hardware, they have led to extensive piracy. In particular, we've been deeply disappointed when users have used our software to leak game content prior to its release and ruin the experience for legitimate purchasers and fans. We have come to the decision that we cannot continue to allow this to occur. Piracy was never our intention, and we believe that piracy of video games and on video game consoles should end. Effective today, we will be pulling our code repositories offline, discontinuing our Patreon accounts and Discord servers, and soon shutting down our websites. We hope our actions will be a small step towards ending piracy of all creators' works. Thank you for your years of support and understanding our decision. So I'm calling bullshit on this
No, this
because
was written by the attorney that they retained over the weekend. This,
yeah,
they
they
don't.
also are being legally required to do many of these things. So that them saying, "We have come to the decision," no, you fucking didn't. The court came to the decision that you have to do that, right? Like literally in the article reporting
Well,
on this,
it was a it was a joint thing, right? It was a
yeah, they
settlement
settled out of court.
that they submitted to the court to say this is what we're going to do. So it was really
Yeah,
like a
fine,
back and
you're right.
forth
The
between
court didn't
the lawyers.
decide,
Yeah.
but they came to this agreement with Nintendo, and they're paying $2.4 million in
Mm.
damages, right? It's just like, come on, man. Like,
Do you think Nintendo's ever seen a penny of that? Like, isn't the LLC just going to wrap up and be like, "Pfft, we've got no money?
I mean, I guess it depends on what happens because I think Nintendo should see that money because dissolving the LLC shouldn't cost them that much.
Yeah, but what if you don't have that much money in the bank as the LLC? I can't imagine they had
Well,
$2.4 million in the bank
I guess that's true. Yeah, because they probably won't. Well, I guess they could garnish wages. I don't really. I guess it depends on how the
because the
company's set up.
plaintiff is the company, not the
Yeah,
people.
if it's an LLC, then they're fine.
Mhm.
But I guess I don't know.
Yeah, it's Tropic Haze LLC is the
Oh, then they're
plaintiff.
fine. Yeah, yeah, you're right. Nintendo will probably see a fraction of that, and the company will just
Mhm.
close. Um, so yeah, I mean, I don't know, man. Like to be like, we made this in totally good faith and we had no intention for it to be used for piracy, and yet behind the paywall is how you get the version that you can use to play Tears of the Kingdom is like, really? You know, like were you really that naive, or are you just saying that to now cover your ass? Right? Like that, because that's how that reads to me, if I'm honest.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's yeah, they don't believe a word of it. I think if piracy may not have been your intention, right? Same with Citra. I
But
don't
like
think
you
piracy
had
was
to
their
know that was
intention.
gonna happen,
Of
right?
course they
Like,
did. Yeah, of
come
course they
on.
did. And you're putting out an early access version, and part of Nintendo's argument was that they saw the kind of the patrons on their Patreon, just the earnings shoot up
They had a
the month
spike in
Tears of the
increase.
Kingdom came out.
Yeah, like that was a coincidence. Like if you really didn't want people to do that, you're like, oh, like again, they say particularly we're deeply disappointed that people use it to leak games. Then why did you have that version available when you knew that that
Yeah.
was a possibility? You could have waited to release that version until after Tears of the Kingdom was commercially available. Easily. But you didn't because you knew you would make more money if you did it that way. Right? Obviously. Come on. And it's like,
I
I don't expect you to admit that, but also don't say this like it's like, "Oh, we came to this decision and we're appalled to find out that people were doing this," even though you published a report
Oh, yeah,
saying
you
that
had
that's
the
what people were
telemetry
doing.
data. Yeah, I
Come
mean,
on.
you gotta imagine they settled because probably their attorney looked through everything that they had and was just like, "Oh, you are so fucked if you go to court." Because, if they go through discovery, all of the Discord messages, all the private messages, all of the files back and forth, everything like in private GitHub repositories or whatever, that's all coming out. Messages from probably customers on Patreon or whatever. So you don't settle for $2.4 million just for no reason.
No.
And I firmly believe that they knew piracy was happening. There's no way they didn't, especially as you pointed out, they've got telemetry in Yuzu and in Citra to figure out what games people are playing and do these progress reports and probably also identify bugs and crashes and issues that are happening with those games. But then, prior to launch, that people are playing those games and you're getting those games working before the launch date of them.
Yeah, so I want to bring in some comments from the community here because a lot of other people like echoed that sentiment. One of our Patreon producers, Wakahula, wrote in and said, "It's unfortunate and 100% on the Yuzu devs for drawing Nintendo's attention to this matter with their paywall builds. I mean, they released a patched version for the leaked Tears of the Kingdom after all. Like, yeah, that to me that shows so much intent, right? Like it's like so clearly you 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 knew this game was coming, you prepped a build for this, and then you had it behind a paywall. Like, clearly you knew that that was something that was gonna increase your earnings on Patreon that month, that it would be a bigger month for you because of this release that people would be able to take advantage of. Like, come
Mhm.
on. And then Wakahula also said there's still Ryujinx for emulation, but honestly, why do you need an emulator for a current gen console other than to pirate games? Game preservation is not an argument here yet. The Switch is still active and the best selling console since the PS2. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, no,
Do
I
you
mean,
think?
I
Well, because I wanted
I
to ask about the because you brought up Citra earlier, right? And if they've been
mm,
charging since 2018, it's not to say that it wasn't active then, but it was moving out of being active at that point, right? Like I think Yuzu and Ryujinx are interesting because usually modern consoles are too powerful to be emulated for a certain number of years. Like it's rare that you have a
I mean, we
like
don't even have a PS4 emulator. I don't
right,
think we ever will.
exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
And it's like the fact that you can emulate the Switch while it's still modern and you've been able to do it for like almost its entire life cycle is kind of unprecedented, you know?
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, uh, I agree. I mean, I think there is reason for emulation of modern consoles. I do think, especially as the Switch ages. I mean, it's just had its 7th birthday. The games that are on there can be experienced in a better way. They just can. Like you can play them at 4K, 60 frames per second if you've got the hardware to run it on. I don't think that is to say that they run terribly on the Switch. I think the Switch is still a great device. But I don't know. I like emulators. I think they're really really cool and interesting, and they are important for game preservation. I think if you can get them running while the console's modern, they only will get better with age. I mean, I think Dolphin was around since when the GameCube was active and the Wii was active, and no one's really got an issue with Dolphin now. But it's only as good as it is now because development has been going for almost 20 years on that thing. Um, I think if you can start when it's popular and when it is modern, you can kind of build upon that base and that foundation that you've built. Citra, I think, is the bigger loss here. Yuzu, yes, probably because of their reckless behavior, deserve to go away, which is a shame. I hope Ryujin stays. But Citra is a real loss because there are going to be games that are lost. The eShop on the 3DS is closed down. You can't access it anymore.
Is Citra the
Things
only good option we have? Is there not another like solid
so
3DS emulator?
there was another 3DS emulator that's just actually gone free because it's called Drastic. And it was paid for until yesterday. It was originally 4.99. It's now free. So you
Wow.
can you can get it for free. And the dev has said that they're also going to be releasing the source code and the change can't be undone, and they apparently were planning on doing it a while ago. So it's not just because of the Nintendo stuff, but that's made the process more urgent. So there are other options to Citra, and also I think Citra and Yuzu will live on. They'll probably They're open source projects. The source code was probably on someone's computer somewhere, and it's just going to spin up, and we'll see probably multiple forks of this project in the same way that we see it with tons of other projects that kind of go away and come back. I don't think it's going to be the end of Yuzu. It'd be the end of Yuzu as we know it, and I don't think that team will ever work on it again. I don't think they legally will be allowed to. But I think someone else will pick it up.
Yeah, they're not legally allowed to. The kind of specifics of what we know is they are being forced to surrender their website domains, any of the devices they have that have been used for physical circumvention, and then the creators agree not to form new entities or associations to develop similar Nintendo emulation software in the future. And then that's why Citra has to go away because that's part of the agreement. Is that they will not do work like this again, as part of another group or for any other device that would spin up in the future. So it's like they couldn't just like go away and come back for like the Switch 2, you know? You're muted.
I don't think they'll be working on emulators ever again. And if they do, they'll be,
Free.
silly to do so because they will just be burnt to the ground by Nintendo.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not a thing I think you should be trying to make money doing, I think
I
is
mean, I
also
think it's okay to accept donations and use that to kind of put your time and energy and effort into, because we wouldn't have game preservation without these things, without MAME, without Dolphin, without all of these emulators. We wouldn't be able to play most of these games, you know? Like, original hardware is dying, cartridges, disk rot, all of that stuff, like, capacitors leaking, all of that old archaic hardware. Someone needed to put the work in to do it, and, Nintendo doesn't go after them because 'cause they're not making money on those consoles anymore, so there's no real need to, or they're not releasing games and having them spoiled and leaked a week early online, and a million or 100 million people, however many it was, downloaded it before launch. I don't know how they were checking how many people downloaded it. I'd love to know. I think that'd be interesting. But I don't. I think it's okay to make money from open source projects and to make money from emulators. It's not okay to do that if you're encouraging people to pirate, and you are if you're saying you can get early access before the game's even out to a version that plays that game.
definitely. I want to pull in another comment. This one comes from Andrew Valentine over in the Discord, who said, I think the Yuzu case is only likely to discourage and make it harder for devs to support and advertise emulation of current gen consoles. Emulation of legacy consoles is unlikely to be affected as those projects have little to no financial effect on the companies whose hardware is being spoofed. And it's not cool to say so, but in my opinion, that's right. I think it's hard to argue that emulation of current gen consoles isn't theft. Convenience isn't an excuse, and we can't simultaneously criticize the current situation in the industry for game devs while supporting tools that can be argued enable the theft of their work. How do you feel about that? Because I guess that's I think an interesting wrinkle to it, right? Because like I agree with you that I think that there are legitimate applications of development or sorry, of emulators of modern consoles, right? Like you talked about. I don't really think that there's a reason ethically that if you paid for a copy of Tears of the Kingdom, but you want to play it in 60 FPS, that like there's something wrong with you doing that.
I also don't think there's a legal reason under the DMCA that you can't do that, right? You can
No,
dump your own
no,
games and
yeah,
and play them if you want to.
you're allowed to do that. Um, I think the point that Andrew is raising here, though, right, is that like there is a argument that the technology being made available while the console is contemporary is like, yeah, it's like, okay, you shouldn't do that, right? Like, I think anybody that cares about the health of the industry can agree that you shouldn't pirate a game that's available on a modern console if you can pay for it, right? Like, that's not a cool thing to do. You're stealing, right?
But what if I
Um,
paid for it? Like, I can
no,
understand
no,
stealing it, that's
I,
fine, that's one
I'm
thing.
with you, but my point is, you also have to acknowledge that you're the minority there of people who are like,
100%, yeah,
just because I
yeah.
can steal, like it would be very easy to click a button and steal it and do it for free, but
I mean,
I'll
this
pay
was this is
$70 for it because it's the ethical thing to do. So then
this is the exact same argument we had with Napster and MP3 players and that, right? They wanted to ban MP3s and ban MP3 players because people were mainly stealing music.
Mm.
But there was a legal route that I could buy the CD, rip it to my hard drive, and then put
Right,
it on my MP3 player, but most people weren't doing that.
but I think that that's a way different thing. Because, like, what you're talking about is, like, the criminalization of an emerging technology because of a unrelated criminal way that people were downloading music files, right? Whereas, like, this is a program that exists specifically to, you know, basically allow you to, like, circumvent, um the way that Nintendo wants you to engage with a currently available piece of software and or hardware. And all of the arguments that we make, right, about ethical piracy, like they do go out the window of like, well, games preservation isn't an argument to be made here. And like to me, that is like the argument for emulation and everything, right? If tomorrow, right, like the industry held hands and was like, we're gonna make a universal system where everybody can load their ROMs and you can just buy them and we'll get a fair cut, and
I
that's
I
that.
I I do think that is an argument, game preservation, but I do think what Andrew has written here, convenience isn't an excuse. I think that's a reason why a lot of people emulate games. Convenience is why EmuDeck is so popular, because I can install every single emulator. I can drop all my
Yeah,
ROMs.
but if
I don't need to have and maintain like 1,000 different things, or
oh,
in the case
yeah,
of the Switch, swap
but
between different apps in order to play them.
I think there's a point to be made there though that most like when games get re-released, people buy the re-released version, right? Like
Yeah.
you're a lot of games that I think people are running to emulate are games that you can't play elsewhere.
Yeah, yeah, I would agree with
So
that, yeah.
like to me, like that's the thing, right? Is like emulation exists primarily because there's a gap in the market, right? Like if these games were commercially available and any game I wanted to play, I could just play it. And I didn't need to go download a special program that somebody made on the internet to do it. I think a lot of people that would be how they would do it rather than going through those extra steps, right? And I guess there's an argument to be made, like maybe it's a game you bought 3 or 4 times and you don't want to buy it a sixth time or whatever, right? Like there's all these other examples in between. But I think the big ethical,
I mean, I had to
line
buy
that we
movies 6
draw.
times. I had to buy on VHS and DVD and Blu-ray and 4K and a digital version.
Right. So I think that's like that's it, I think it gets murky as soon as the product is available somewhere else. And if it is, then that's where you should be getting it, right? And I think there's all these other scenarios that come up where it's like, oh well, I want to play it on this other device. I want to play it on here. I want to play it on there. I think if you're paying for it and you're going through those hoops like we talked about, then like fair play. Like that, you're not breaking the law. Then there's nothing. I don't think there's anything ethically fraught about that. But I think what Andrew is talking about, right, is like it becomes dicey, I think, when you're like, okay, well, yeah, there are legal applications that you can use Yuzu. Yeah, but like, I'm pretty sure that if we looked at the data, right, like if it was trackable, what percentage of people that use that emulator are actually paying for the games that they're emulating? Because I bet it's almost none of them, right?
Mhm.
So like, I guess that's an interesting argument that I guess I haven't really considered because I don't think there's another example of an emulator that is actively this good while the console it's emulating is still commercially like thriving.
There's never been one that I can
So
remember. I mean, maybe the Wii U emulator, CMU, but even then, like, no one was really using the Wii U at the time, so it didn't really matter all that much.
yeah, yeah, sure. But like, because I guess like that's an interesting question, for me is like, is there an argument that it's unethical to actively develop a Nintendo Switch emulator while the Nintendo Switch is out there because it is so obviously predictable that the most common application of it is going to be doing something that is unethical, right? Like, is it unethical
Maybe,
for you to
maybe,
release
yeah.
that product at this time? Whereas, like, if you were to do it 3 years from now, 5 years from now, like when we're in the midst of the next console generation, then I think, then it's a different argument, right? It becomes a different argument. Because we're all sitting here saying that it's a shame that Citra is gone. The 3DS is only recently antiquated, right? So it's like, is it only as soon as the eShop goes down that then it's okay? It's like, where's the line on that?
Yeah, and that was in active development when the 3DS was around. Like, they were
Right,
actively developing that emulator at the time. It's a tough one. I mean, I struggle with, like, ethical dilemmas like that. I personally think, developing the tool is fine. If p Encouraging people to pirate is not fine.
right,
I think Ryujinx does a good job of not encouraging people to pirate it. They will not touch any updates to a game until the game's released because they won't pirate things on the team seemingly. Which is why no one was using it for Tears of the Kingdom before it came out because it didn't work on it and it needed to be patched. And Yuzu patched it before the release and then charged people for early access so that they could access that patch. And that really is where the ethics come in for me. It's charging people for a piracy tool. Not not I have no issue with open source emulators. You don't have to pay. You didn't have to pay for Yuzu. You didn't have to support Yuzu. You could just go and download it, and it was free. And I've got no issue with that.
I think
Um,
if you're doing it that way where it's like and I know that this is like silly because we were talking about like Patreon, patreon.com. But if you're following like a patronage model where the expectation is if you like it, you can support it because that's just what you want to do, right? Because you're like an ethical person and you're like, oh, I
yeah,
enjoyed
yeah.
this tool, so I'd like to throw you $1. I think that's fine. I think it is a different thing when you have a monthly Patreon where you're like having spikes in revenue around releases because you are enabling people to commit piracy, right? Like it's plain and simple, right?
Yeah, I mean, they were making almost $30,000 a month, and that's now it spiked up around the release of giant games. But $30,000 a month is a big chunk of change
A lot of money.
to bring home. Yeah, it's a lot of money, and I can imagine, that's the main reason kind of Nintendo went after them. Maybe they do have 2.4 million in the bank after all. I yeah, I struggle with the ethics behind it. I personally, for me, it's if you're making a tool, it's kind of fair game for anyone if they want to pirate. That's their choice. Ultimately, I don't think people should. But you're telling me, Andrew, all of the ROMs you've ever used, because I'm sure you've emulated games. In fact, I know you have. Um, you dumped them from NES cartridges or GBA cartridges. You didn't find them online somewhere on archive.org? Because I think the majority of people don't dump their own ROMs, but they don't feel bad about it because they're old games that they've owned before or they still own, and they're just like, "Well, I can't buy this anywhere else, so I'm just gonna go and grab the file."
That's why I genuinely don't think that like the convenience thing is not a compelling point to me. You know, like and like I hear what you're saying, Andrew. Like, you know, I definitely get where you're coming from. But I think for me it's like I think it's just you know that what is it? It's Judge Thomas, I think. It's a quote about pornography, right? It's like it's hard to define, but I know it when I see it. That's how I feel about ethical like emulation. Like I think it's
Yeah.
so obvious when it's ethical to emulate a game and when it is not, right? And like to me, it's like convenience is less the factor than because I think generally uh the time when it happens most often is because of convenience, is because the best way to play it is emulation, right? Um, it's like you look at like the correlation between the rise of like streaming platforms like Netflix and the death of like piracy platforms like the Pirate Bay and stuff like that, right? Where it's like as it becomes easier to not break the law, people will not break the law, right? Like it's like most people are happy to spend money for a thing that they want if it's available. And I think the huge like community that exists around emulation and ROM sharing and all that stuff, a lot of it does stem from this stuff that you want just not there not being an option for you to get into it in a way that's accessible, you know? And not something that doesn't require you to maintain increasingly rare and expensive hardware, niche hardware, you know?
Yeah, and even if you have, say, like, an analog machine, right? And you're putting the actual cartridges in it, which I don't think most people do. I think most people chuck ROMs on an SD card or use one of those, like, cartridges where you can like the Evercar or whatever they're called.
Yeah.
Um, Even then, the hardware is still emulating it. Yes, it's hardware emulation instead of software emulation, but it's still an emulator, and people have no issue going out and buying an analog pocket and going, "Wow, I love this thing."
Right.
And I get that that's because it's an old device. But I can still how's that any different to me saying, "Well, you should be subscribing to Switch Online to play those games," because you can play those games, and Nintendo has a facility for you to play those games, and it's a monthly subscription, so why are you not doing that? And why are you going to buy an analog pocket or download a GBA emulator and
Well,
playing the games that way?
in that case though, right? Like in an analog pocket sense, like you own the cart, right? Like
Not
you're
always, though. You can shove an SD card in there.
sure, but then that's a different thing then, right? Like I think then you're getting back to that same argument, and it's like, well, then you're probably doing it because the game you want to play is not on NSO, right? And if it was, you probably would play it there.
Yeah, maybe, or maybe you just don't want to subscribe to Switch Online and you want the convenience of not just having some of your GBA games, you want all of them. And it comes back to that convenience argument of I want everything
But
there
it's not
on
only just
one device.
convenience there though, then it is accessibility as well though, right? Because there's games there that you can't that you want that you can't play. And like for some of them, it's like there's
Yeah, like the
licensing, there's this
Pokemon
and
games for the
right?
longest
Like
time.
they're
It's like,
not there, right? And it's like that's the Game Boy game that most people are gonna want to play. Okay, so then there's literally no way for me to legally play those games on modern hardware, right? The best case would be if you have a 3DS and you have that version of the game, great, okay. But again, like if you don't already own a 3DS with that on it, you're fucked now because that doesn't exist anymore. So it's like, what are you supposed to do? Just not play those games ever again? Like only own a Game Boy and play it that way? It's just like that's not realistic for a lot of people, and there's only a certain number of them available, right? Like it's like there's going to come a point where that number dwindles and dwindles and dwindles, and it's
yeah,
like yeah, like that's it's just not a sustainable answer to that problem. So, like, I think when you're talking about the older devices, like, I think like you said, there's a reason that nobody thinks twice about it. But I think when you're talking about the Switch, it's like, it's just not the same thing. It just isn't.
I agree. I do agree. I was really playing devil's advocate to some extent, but I still have no issue with these emulators existing. I don't think you should pirate, but in the same way, I think it's fine for them to exist, personally. I
Yeah, I
think the
think,
developers should be ostracized for developing, a tool, but they should be for then charging for it to promote piracy.
yeah, I'm inclined to agree. I think that's where the line comes for me ethically, is that like what they were doing was just not cool, right? And it's like it's obvious that that like what they were doing was very illegal. And it's not like who is this hurting situation? It's like, well, it was hurting Nintendo to the tune of like a million copies of a game. That's not nothing, at $70 a
Yeah.
pop, that's quite a lot of money. Uh, Last note I want to end this one on is we got a comment from Trendy Brendy talking about Citra and the shame of Citra kind of getting caught in the crosshairs here. Incredibly, much more saddened about the loss of further Citra development. I've been using it to dump my own cartridges and play with the traditional controller for a couple of years or so now. And this is one part of the takedown that seems to be telling me, sorry, pal, if you don't want to, if you want to play Shin Megami Tensei 4, you'll have to do it with hand cramping. I'll, of course, keep my current build of the emulator on my computer. It's just disappointing to know that it'll never get better.
You know what? This is a fantastic argument for current current console emulation. Nintendo
Accessibility.
sucks at accessibility.
Yeah, that's a good
What
point.
if I as a disabled gamer wanna use my, you know,
Xbox accessibility controller.
my Xbox accessibility controller? I can't use it with the Switch, but I can run Tears of the Kingdom on my PC and I
You're
can
making a
still
lot of
play it.
sense, Steve. You're making a lot of sense. I hadn't thought about that. That is a very good, practical, legal, above board application of a modern console. So, but
And that's
again,
and that's a complete, like, missed opportunity for Nintendo. Every single game comes out, I swear we say, "Where's the accessibility options?" Like, "What are you doing?"
I do think the point that Andrew makes is a compelling one of like, and Wakahula said the same thing, right? It's like, what does this exist for if not for piracy? And yeah, those people exist, those use cases exist. They got to be a fraction of the number of people using the damn thing. And I think
Yeah.
that it's a little ethically fraught for me. I got to as somebody who's generally pro emulator. To me this there's a reason I don't emulate Switch games, is I guess my last point on it.
Honestly, it's a big old hassle as well. Like, it's not worth the effort.
It's
Once
not
you
worth
get it to working, it's just not. It's just really not. Just use your
So
Switch.
we are gonna do one more little Switch related thing here and celebrate a very special birthday because the Nintendo Switch is 7 years old this week, everybody. Big round of applause for everybody's favorite console. And we're going to talk about that in a minute. But before we do that, let me remind you that this episode of Nintendo Noise is brought to you by our Patreon producers for the month of March. For the first time, they are Arnold J. Rimmer, Christopher Valens, Earth Visitor, Gabriel Hasselmeyer, aka Sobi, Snackago, Steve Stompy, Susan Likes Cats and Also Movies, Ty the Dude, and Wakahula. Thank you all so much for your support over on patreon.com/flipscreengames. You're all the reals to the real, and we greatly appreciate your support of this and all of our sister shows. Remember, if you want to go and show your support just like they did, if you want to write in with your thoughts just like all those folks did, if you want to keep the conversation rolling between episodes, you can head over to flipscreen.games. That's our website where you will find links to all the places we are on the web. And no, wait, that's it. I was going to say and much more, but you can't have more than that. It's just links to all the places we are. So go over
Yes.
there and
Yes.
click on some stuff. Show your support, however you choose to get involved. We thank you for tuning in to another episode of Nintendo Noise. Steve, I have a question here from Andrew Valentine, and I want to close the show off on it. 7 years of Switch seems like an obvious question, but what are your 7 favorite Switch games? Or
Nice.
possibly more interestingly,
Oh,
7 favorite Switch memories or experiences. I say forget the memories, forget the experiences. We've talked about that in the past. You can go listen to the 6th birthday one. I like the idea of your 7 favorite games on Switch. I think that's not an easy question. And we don't have a lot of time left. So I think let's do it. And, it's not non-committal. It's you don't have to,
oh
it
my god,
doesn't have
it's
to
tough.
be your
It's really tough.
all-time locked-in list, but I
Are
want
we
you
going
to.
with exclusives? I think we should go with exclusives.
Okay, I like that. Sure. I I
Okay.
I generally would say you could kinda go either way on that one for me, because if there's a game that you played on Switch and you're like, "To me, this is one of the games that I loved on Nintendo Switch," I'm not pressed
Yeah,
about that as.
like Stardew Valley is one of those for me. I played so many hours of that
Yeah,
game,
like,
but I wouldn't say it's like my favorite game on Switch.
if you wanna include that, I'm comfortable with that. I think that's totally
Okay.
cool. But if you wanna make it exclusive, like, I'm down to clown, you know?
I think exclusive. I think I'm starting with Mario Kart. Uh,
How about this too for this so we don't have to put pressure on ourselves? Unranked. You just pick 7. We don't have to
okay.
say
Yeah.
in order.
All right.
Okay, so you're saying Mario
I'm
Kart?
gonna yeah, I'm putting a list down so I can remember what I've said. So Mario Kart, I think is number 1 for me. I think am I doing all mine and then you're doing all yours? Yeah?
However you want. We could go round rob. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll say this. I think I'm inclined to agree with you. I think Mario Kart will be on my list as well.
Yeah, it's on
So,
there.
but we'll see. But okay, go
I
ahead.
th
You can keep going with yours.
Animal Crossing is definitely on there. I
Sure. Yeah, it's
think,
on my list too.
Mario Odyssey, Breath of the
Yeah.
Wild,
I Tears of the Kingdom.
and I'm also putting and Tears of the Kingdom in there. I'm counting them as one game, and I don't care because it's my list. Um,
Sicko.
I think Metroid Dread. Love Metroid Dread.
Good answer.
Splatoon 2, not 3. Um,
No, absolutely not. Jettison it from the
that's not
list.
no, it's not going on
Nah,
your list.
I think I've become a Splatoon hater. I think I decided Splatoon isn't good.
Tetris 99.
Great answer.
Loved that game.
Top
Um,
7 though? That's crazy.
oh,
Maybe.
that's my 7th game. No, you're right. It
Yeah,
can't be.
can't be.
What am I missing? Mario Wonder's
Well, I would say
great.
Mario Wonder,
Yeah,
maybe that
Mario
one.
Wonder's phenomenal.
Yeah, right?
Mario Wonder's a great game. What else do I really like? Yeah,
I'd say
I
I'd
really
say
love Good Job. Good Job was a
sure.
great game. I had so much fun with Good Job.
So I like a lot of your list. I would say Mario Kart's probably on mine. Animal Crossing's a lock. Odyssey's a lock. Tears of the Kingdom / Breath of the Wild, if we're crazy, is a
We
lock.
can do the 2. We can say it's the same game.
If whatever. Metroid Dread, definitely. I'm out on Splatoon. I would say Mario Wonder's definitely on that list. I didn't play Good Job. I love Tetris 99. I don't think it makes the cut. I would say Fire Emblem Three Houses, definitely on
Okay.
my list. Um,
Link's Awakening was so good as well.
oh, Link's Awakening is
Oh my
another
god,
really
that's
good
so
shout.
tough.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
You've not got a Pokemon game on your list. What are you doing?
There won't be one. That's fine.
They're not great? Not good? Not good
Oh,
enough in the
Legends
top 7?
Arceus though actually is that game
Yeah.
fucks actually.
What about Ring Fit? I wanna kill Allegra every time I see
I
her,
like
know?
Ring Fit, but it's not a top 7 game. That's
No.
insane. Um, Hmm. Oof, gosh, that's really hard actually. Because I'm at 8 right now with your list minus the games I haven't played plus Fire Emblem.
Yeah,
And
stuff. I mean, Fire Emblem don't make it. It's not a great game. Um, that's fine.
get out of here. It's not a great game. You played 30 seconds of it.
I did not. I went back and I gave it a really good go.
Yeah, yeah.
You know what? I was going through a breakup when that game came out, so maybe it's just the
Yeah,
bad
so try it
memories
again.
of
Don't
that.
blame the game.
Yeah. I did try again, and then I sold it because I didn't like it. It went with Bayonetta because I thought that game was trash as well.
Yeah, I mean, so I'm inclined to say that some subsection of that is my list, right? Like, I don't think there's a big game that I'm not thinking of, and that's 9, right? I'd have to cut 2.
Yeah, it's tough, isn't it? I'm
Yeah.
looking up the top 10 games on Switch, seeing what we're missing. Gonna do it.
I don't think we're missing anything that's
Well,
like
yeah, I mean, there's stuff like Mario Rabbids. Maybe
like
we
those
could put
there's
on
lots of
there.
other good games on Switch. That's not what I'm saying, but I'm saying, like, I don't know that there's a game we're forgetting that's better than any of these games.
Who wrote this list?
Maybe Luigi's
It
Mansion 3 is, like, another one for some people, but I didn't play that one, so I wouldn't know.
see, see, I would put Stardew Valley on there. I really think it belongs there.
To me, that's a game you could easily make a case for, but I'm also like, it's not on
It's
mine.
not exclusive. I've not got a Mario
Yeah,
Party game in here.
I don't know that, like, are they good
We've
enough?
not got Smash in here either.
Oh, that no, see, that needs to be Smash Ultimate needs to be on it. That's such a good one. That's,
I
like, the
don't know.
best Smash.
It's the ultimate Smash.
It is.
But is it top 7? I don't know. See, I struggle with it. Maybe Mario Kart doesn't belong here
Here's my
either,
thing.
but it has to.
I'm bumping a couple games, and not because 'cause they're not great, but I have caveats. So, I'm bumping Mario Kart and Link's Awakening because they are both re-releases.
See, I thought that, but Link's Awakening is a remake, and it's
And it's
phenomenal, and it's
so
gorgeous.
fire. It's
I
so good.
can't.
It's so good.
And the limited edition was just incredible. There's
It's so
no way
good.
that that's going off my
But
list.
I gotta bump it because I think if I don't bump it, I'm not including Fire Emblem or Smash, and that's crazy. So, I'm saying I feel like I'm inclined to say it's Animal Crossing, Mario Odyssey, Tears of the
Mhm.
Kingdom, Metroid Dread, Mario Wonder, Fire Emblem Three Houses, Smash Ultimate is I think what I would say for my 7. And I think if you are interested, Link's Awakening is my bubble game. Like, that would be the 8th game if I'm adding an 8th game. And then
That's your game for next year, for the 8th
for the
birthday.
8th birthday, yeah. And then
Yeah.
I think I would add, like, if we're going beyond that, right? Like, it's Link's Awakening, Mario Kart, and Pokemon Arceus if I'm writing out a top 10. I think that's the 10.
I don't know, I think about the memories I've had with these games and Mario Kart and Animal Crossing and Splatoon 2. I had such phenomenal time with friends playing those games that there's no way I couldn't. Good Job for me has to be on the list. I, like, had such a great time playing that
The
through.
Mario Kart I can bump because I had memories with it when it was on Wii U. It's a game that,
I
like,
never played it on Wii U, so
it
yeah.
transcends being a Switch game. And I think Link's Awakening is the same thing for me, where it's like, this is the best version of a game I already loved.
Mhm.
Great.
And Metroid Dread has to go on there for me because it was one of those games I just didn't stop playing. I played it nonstop through
We
the
both
weekend.
didn't
I
even think we
couldn't
were
put it
gonna play
down.
it, and then it was our game
No,
of the
it was
year. Like,
yeah, it was
yeah, that
one of the
has to
best
be on
games.
there.
Yeah, one of the best games I've ever played. So yeah, that's definitely deserves a
That's
place on
like
this list.
that game is surprisingly high on that list for me, I would think. Like, if I was
Yeah,
gonna rank them, I feel like it
I
would
was surprised about Mario Wonder 2 for me because I loved that game. I don't actually think it would make my top 7. No, my top 7: Mario Kart, Animal Crossing, Mario Odyssey, Breath of the Wild, and Tears of the Kingdom, Metroid Dread, Splatoon 2, and I would probably put Link's Awakening as my number 7, with Good Job, Mario Wonder, and Tetris 99 being the games that didn't make the cut.
solid lists.
I think so.
Both harder and easier than I thought, weirdly enough. Thank you for writing in, Andrew. If you guys want to write in with your top 7 games or memories on the Nintendo Switch, go ahead and do that, and we'll read them next week. because it's the Switch's birthday, baby. Everybody celebrate because guess what? This might be the last one, the last birthday before the new console, right? Right?
I sadly doubt that, but
Right?
yeah.
Please, please. Anyway, thank you guys for joining us here in another episode of Nintendo Noise. Remember, if you want to write in with your thoughts, questions, or show your support for the show, head over to flipscreen.games. That's our website where you can find links to all the places we are all over the web. However you choose to get involved, it really helps us out. So go and show your support for the show, however you choose to do so. We thank you for tuning in to another episode of Nintendo Noise. For the crew, I've been Pete. He's been Steve. We'll see you next week.